We now have another piece of the puzzle showing how big and organized Donald Trump's alleged plot to stay in power after losing the 2020 election really was. Among the headlines this week about the most legally ensnared former president in American history, the charges in Arizona against 11 so-called fake electors and key aides to Trump, as the NBC News report states, are the latest example of Trump's efforts to overturn the 2020 election, sprouting into legal cases during his 2024 bid to retake office. Arizona was one of the 7 states where alternate electors signed paperwork falsely claiming Trump had won the states. Prosecutors have already charged alternate electors, this is in quotes, in Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan. Now, here's the thing about this story. Lest you think that this attempt after January 6th was some fly-by-night crackpot, or leading up to January 6th was some fly-by-night crackpot scheme, the Arizona indictment yet again proves how coordinated these plots allegedly went all the way up to Donald Trump. And again, from NBC News, quote, Trump is described as unindicted conspirator 1 in Arizona indictment, which includes charges of conspiracy, fraud, and forgery, end quote. The Trump aides who have been indicted include Mark Meadows, Trump's former White House chief of staff, Rudy Giuliani, the former New York City mayor and Trump attorney, Boris Epshteyn, a Trump campaign official and attorney, former Trump campaign and White House official Mike Roman, former Trump attorney Jenna Ellis, former Trump attorney Christina Bobb, and John Eastman, yet another attorney and Trump legal advisor in the aftermath of the 2020 election, end quote. These are very, very real charges of very real crimes allegedly committed at the highest levels of the Trump campaign and the Trump White House. Trump himself is, of course, charged in Georgia's indictment. The 7 states with fake electors in 2020 were, left to right on your screen, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, and Pennsylvania. As we've said, we've seen charges in 4 of those states now, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, and Georgia. All 7 of these states are key battleground states that could be decisive in this year's election. Joining us now is Ryan J. Riley, justice reporter for NBC and the author of the remarkable book, Sedition Hunters, How January 6th Broke the Justice System. Ryan, here's the thing. That Georgia indictment is so detailed. It's got texts. It's got communications that go well beyond Georgia, goes to Pennsylvania, goes to Michigan, goes to Arizona. So the information is not new to us, but the degree to which this was a sophisticated effort to overturn democracy is clearer and clearer with each of these indictments.
It's true. And also, even in the Supreme Court this week, I found what was interesting in the arguments is you had the Trump lawyer essentially concede there that this was not activity that could be considered official presidential acts. This was private activity because the justices lined up some of those questions for him, and coordinating with some of these individuals would end up being part of the center of this case, of the federal case, if that ever actually goes to trial. Of course, the fact that the Supreme Court even had the arguments this week was a huge win for Trump. And it seems like this is almost guaranteed to get kicked back past the election at this point, or certainly we won't get to a verdict by the time the election actually comes about. But, say in 2025 or whenever this goes, theoretically, if Donald Trump does not get reelected, that's really what we're going to be focusing on, is a lot of these efforts to make January 6th this major day and create this sort of chaos and catastrophe that would allow for them essentially to take the election because there was so much confusion. They ultimately wanted to get this to the Supreme Court. Creating that chaos and creating this confusion and trying to get Mike Pence in on this deal was really the essence of what all of this was about. The riot, on the other hand, was an additional part of that chaos, but really it was to create this environment in which they could seize the power and stay in the White House. And
as you read the January 6th indictment by Jack Smith's team, or you read the Georgia indictment, or you see what happened in Michigan, or you're reading this information out of Arizona, what you're realizing is that what at the time looked a bit like a clown show, right? But Rudy Giuliani showing up at the Four Seasons landscaping place in Philadelphia with makeup dripping down his face. It seemed disorganized, but in fact, there was a plot. And John Eastman had designed it, and these are all lawyers who knew better. It started by being something about, well, in case we win one of these audits or we win one of these court cases, at least we'll have a slate of electors, into fake electors who actually lied and said we are the real electors and tried to get their names submitted in contrary to the law.
Yeah, I mean, the numbers are really what this is all about. It kind of reminds me of this quote that Mike Fanone said to me back in the day talking about January 6th and how, so a lot of the rioters who showed up were morons, as he described them, but there were 15,000 of them, right? So that's sort of what the danger was. And when you have all of these individuals who are, might be sort of clownish and buffoonish and have that, Rudy Giuliani having that sort of ridiculous press conference, but there's millions of Americans who are willing to believe those lies. And I think having those numbers and having people, who actually got law degrees at one point be willing to do this effort is really what made this dangerous.
Ryan, always great to have you on the show. Thank you, my friend. Ryan J. Reilly is NBC News justice reporter and author of a remarkable book called Sedition Hunters. This guy has followed every case having to do with January 6th.